the official radio station of the Church of Christ or Iglesia ni Cristo.
Don't underestimate
the power
of a single
conversation.
It could change your whole life.
INCRadio Chatline.
Conversations that matter.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into INC Radio Chatline. I am Tony, and with me is EJ this evening. And for wherever you are watching from, we hope that you can join us in the conversation as we will be talking about accountability. And I know it's kind of might be more of like a heavier handed topic to be discussing so late. But I don't know about you, EJ, towards the end of the year, I get kind of in my feels about just life and things.
I feel like that's everyone. Like I'm definitely seeing a lot more. Like it's presented like a joke, like like in a meme format.
Yeah.
But people are like, they're making jokes about how it's like January, February, then March, April, May, June, July. Like it kind of just goes by, and you're like, wow, we're in December already. At the end of the year, like you kind of reflect on what did I do, like this year, what did I accomplish, this year.
Yeah, I think it's kind of that time of the year where we all start to think a little bit more. We get a little bit more recluse and just kind of with our thoughts and reflecting on what's happened, basically. Mm-hmm. And part of that, for me at least, is accountability. And I don't know that we talk about accountability too much because it's something that's a little bit more serious. But let me start off asking, how does it show up for you in your day-to-day living? Like, for example, in your professional life or, with your relationships, personal life, or even other responsibilities, what does taking accountability look like for you, EJ?
I mean, for me, like in terms of like when you mentioned like work life, I remember like making like the first time I made a mistake at my job, and it was like I wouldn't say it's like a big mistake, but it definitely, like I could say that it wasted a bit of the company's time with that mistake. And like I was so scared to like admit it, but I did approach like my supervisor. I was like I'm so sorry, I made like this mistake here. I'm gonna have to, like, I guess I would need a couple more like parts of like the parts that we were using to like assemble, because it was like assembling
production.
Yeah. And so I was like, I'm gonna need a couple more of these parts, and they kind of thanked me for being honest, and like they were like giving the whole speech, it's okay, you're new. Like it happens, and yeah, like that's how it shows up for me, like in terms of like my work life. In terms of like my personal life, accountability is when you tell yourself you're gonna get up at, like, let's say you tell yourself, I'm gonna get up at 8 p.m. Not 8 p.m. 8 a.m.
Whoa. I mean, if you work at night, that's valid.
Yeah,
if you work at night, that's fair.
If you tell yourself you're gonna get up at 8 a.m. You get up at 8 a.m. You don't wake up at 8 a.m. and then you start scrolling on your phone. Before you know it, it's 10 a.m.
Yeah. It's that's definitely one way for sure. It's, I guess, keeping your word, or when you break your word, like the example that you gave earlier, you own up to it, right? That's basically what we think about when we talk about accountability is owning up to things, or making sure that we are keeping ourselves in check when we do certain things. When we say we're going to do something, like when you say you're going to show up on time for work, you keep yourself accountable. Like, yeah, I'm going to show up on time, because if I don't, it'll ruin the whole day. I mean, some people, it might just depend, but that's just one example. Another one that I can think of that's like work related ish is like when I'm trying to, make different decisions, and then there's like that one thing that you forgot to do, and then that kind of messes up like schedules, or that messes up how things will operate logistically. and then you have to tell your supervisor like, hey, I forgot to do that one thing, um, and then being able to again own up to it, and then whatever consequences I guess come after that. So that's like professional work life, and as a student, taking accountability to study, like
Yeah.
or like when you fail and you don't do well on the exam, like being able to tell your parents like, oh, I didn't pass the exam, or
I'm
not like
I
hiding
can
it.
Yeah, I would say this in terms of like school. Like there's definitely like been tests where I'm sorry, mom, I didn't like study that. And you kind of get tempted to kind of maybe just look right or left, because you don't like the thing about that is that you fear failing, right? You fear failing. You don't want to submit an empty paper. You don't want to run out of time and then you haven't written anything. You just want to write anything that you can write there, right? So there's definitely like times when I was still in school where I've had wanted to kind of just like maybe take a peek like the next table over,
Hmm.
but I didn't because like I remember, because I always remember this thing that like my parents, teachers have told me, like I've said in the past over and over, like when you cheat like at a test, you're cheating yourself out of
Yeah.
like you're like nobody else is negatively affected except you, because you're like it kind of falls back into habit of like it becomes a habit that you kind of fall back on, and
Yeah.
like you're like you don't know the answer. Okay, like you kind of just like, okay, what did other people do? Like you don't you kind of build a habit of not doing your own research basically. You
I
kind of
love that insight. That's actually a great insight, that when you don't take accountability for certain things, it can create bad habits.
yeah.
That's an interesting. I didn't even think about that. That's an interesting example.
Yeah, with like earlier too, right? You tell yourself you're gonna wake up, you're gonna get up, not this wake up, you're gonna get up at 8 a.m. Like
Hmm.
one of those days you might just tell yourself, you know what? I was very good this week. I'll just, like just for this one, just for this one morning, I'm just gonna scroll on my phone at 8
Mm.
a.m. Like, and it kind of throws off, like it starts throwing you off now, because you end up getting up at 10 instead of 8. You wasted, I would say, 2 hours where you're trying to get that, like you feel like hasn't that happened to you, like when you end up waking up later than you, or you end up
You
you
said you
get up
would.
later, yeah, than you
Yeah.
expected. You kind of feel like you can't do anything for like the rest of the day.
Yeah. It
Like you
makes you
feel
feel
like you don't,
lousy, makes you feel crappy, like you're just like, oh no.
yeah, like you don't have
Well,
enough time to do anything.
yeah. And then the motivation kind of dies out because you're just kind of disappointed in yourself. Yeah. Those
Mhm.
are tough moments. What about in relationships? How do you take accountability in relationships? Like with your family, with your friends?
I mean,
For those who have significant others in the comment section, feel free to weigh in. Accountability, what does that look like?
I would say, like, you know how like sometimes even with our family we get into arguments, and
Mm-hmm.
the thing that they say about arguments is that both parties will always have like a fault in that argument, and like
Mm.
I know at the moment you might not want to like look at your own faults because you're kind of like you're emotional, you're you're emotional, you're kind of just focusing on like the point that you're trying to make at that moment. But
Mm-hmm.
like when afterwards, when you're like when you have time to think about it, that's kind of like, for me, that's when I start to think about like what did I do wrong, what did I say wrong,
Right.
what were they trying to tell me. you know Sorry, what were they trying to tell me, like what was the point like that they were trying to make. And then
Yeah.
I kind of go back to like like what I ended up saying. And it's not just at the moment, like like you apologize afterwards, right? You apologize after, okay, I'm sorry I said this, like you're right about this thing. If they are right, then if they were right about that thing, then you tell them they were right. If there's it's a point that you really insist on, then insist on that. But like afterwards too, like you don't just kind of mm, like after you've had that argument you've made up, you don't just let it be okay, like let's forget about it and just move past. It's like something for you to take moving forward, right? Where
Yeah.
you're sort of like you have this like thing in your mind now that like like the next time that you're both like maybe feeling emotional, you're like, okay, this is like this is like last time, like we're getting emotional, we're saying some hurtful things, like let's try to I don't know, let's try to reconvene a little bit later on, right? So it's not just you're able to get your point across, you made up, and then the next time it kind of just goes back to that, like it's like every what I strive to do now is like with every inevitable fight, like I just try to learn something from it
That's
that
good.
would improve how I handle fights, or handle arguments, with people moving forward. Because the thing is, like, you argue with people because you want them to, it's like you kind of think of like arguments like this, you think of them not as a fight, but kind of like as
You're working towards a
aggressive,
solution
yeah,
together.
aggressively looking for solution.
Well, it doesn't have to be aggressive. See, that's my thing. I think what happens a lot of the time is that when, at least in the conversations that have grown into conflict on my end, is a
Mhm,
lot of what's happening is that the more, like what you said, the more that you start to get emotional, the more that you don't start to understand each other. And the
yeah.
not understanding part, I think, is where the the intensity starts to come out a little
Mhm,
bit, where it's like you feel like, no, you're not getting what I'm saying, like, no, like that's not what I'm trying to say. And then the other person's
mhm,
like, no, I understand you. And it's like, but do you? And then it just gets into this whole um it just
mhm,
gets bigger than it needs to be, I think. So I in terms of handling conflict, it is really working towards a solution, but it doesn't always have to be
mhm.
aggressive. It can get emotional, but it doesn't
Emotion.
always have to be. It doesn't always have to be aggressive. I think what you're speaking to a lot is also self awareness. I think self awareness and accountability kind of go hand in hand there. Um, what I will say is that a lot of the time too, in when it comes to accountability in relationships, is that we tend to think that intentions are everything. You can come into something with good intentions, like oh, I have good intentions to, to help this person, or this is what I have in mind. But just because you have those good intentions doesn't mean it will always land the way that you think
Mhm,
it will. Like sometimes the landing, it comes off a certain way to a person, or the way that you reacted, it's just it's not, there's often a disconnect. And I think we think that um, having good intentions all the time automatically means we can't do bad things, but sometimes we end up doing bad things. And then when you do the bad thing, it's hard for people to accept it, because it's like, well, I didn't mean to hurt you. Like, I didn't mean to, hurt your feelings. It's like, but you did,
yeah.
and it's important that we kind of are able to separate that idea of like being a, it doesn't mean you're a bad person, but in that moment there was something bad that happened that hurt somebody else, and being able to say
Mhm,
like, I'm sorry that I did that to you, without
mhm,
having
mhm,
to, like, that's something that I'm learning, where I'm trying to remember that not everyone's going to see my intentions and what I'm trying to do. So I need to be careful about the way that I go about things. And then if there's something that I do that does offend somebody, like being able to say like, I'm sorry that happened. Um, I don't want you to feel that way. That is totally the opposite of what I want you to feel. I'm sorry that you know what I mean,
mhm.
without like going into kind of like defend your character and your integrity in that way.
Why are you
So
reacting this way? I'm trying to help you.
yeah,
I've
it's like
definitely gotten that feeling.
yeah,
Like why are you aggressive towards me? I'm trying to help you. Like I
yeah.
like or like why are you aggressive towards me? I'm on your side, right?
Mhm,
But yeah, that's what you're saying. Like the thing is, they won't always get that at
mhm.
like at first, because I've definitely been on the other side as well, where someone was trying to help me and it didn't click in my mind that they were trying to help me
Yeah.
like right away. Like they were trying to help me in the way of getting me to understand the other person's perspective, but in my mind it just translated to, oh, they're taking that other person's side, they're taking their
Yeah.
side, you know, they're
Yeah.
against me, they're taking their side. It's like and then you, like, afterwards, that's when I began to realize, oh, like they were trying to get me to get the other, to understand the other person's point, you
Hmm.
know, because they don't want to see me and, you know, the other person fighting.
Yeah.
They want to help resolve this issue. And like for me, that's like when you kind of like take accountability of like you like for me, I'd like to, like, I like to approach them afterwards and acknowledge this, because I know sometimes you, when you realize it, you kind of feel ashamed to approach the other person, like, right, because you're like, you know, they were right, and you kind of just acknowledge it in yourself, but you don't tell them, which
Yeah.
is something I've done. But like now I'm trying to be more where, you know, like if something like that happens, I make an effort to approach the other person and like let them know that, you know, like you really help, like you really help resolve this issue, and I want you to know that you know, that you did good, that you helped, you know, that your effort meant something. You know,
Yeah.
this is for me, that's what I want, you know, that's what I want as well, that to know that i did I did help, you know. Oh yeah.
So, with that in mind, we kind of spoke to different aspects, a personal life or professional life. Let's kind of build a checklist together, EJ. And for those who are watching with us as well, being able to build a kind of um, a little bit of a step by step of what we can do. Like, what is for you in the things that you've experienced,
Mhm.
just without necessarily, you don't have to give a specific example, but what would you do first to kind of keep yourself accountable to things, whether it's to things, to people, or whatever it may be? What's the first step for you in being accountable?
Like bridging the gap between what you want and what you do, you know, like
Mhm.
just in the small things, like telling yourself, you know what, I'm gonna wake up at, I'm gonna wake up at 8, and I'm gonna get up at 8 a.m. Do that, you know, like that's it can start as small as that, you know, like tell yourself, oh, I'm gonna work out, you know, I'm gonna start working out. And
Mhm.
like you don't have to, like for me it's tell myself like I'm gonna work out for this week. You know, it's like instead of giving myself an indefinite number, I'm giving myself something that's kind of like attainable. Like this week, just for this week, you know, I'm gonna work out from Monday to Sunday consistently. And then next Monday, you kind of make that promise to yourself again. I'm gonna work out from Monday to Sunday, and because it like for me that feels more achievable than like I'm gonna work out from now on. You know, and you get to kind of see the like of like what from now on means.
Yeah,
You know, and that's that, like that looks like in terms of depth, that's like, oh, like that seems very
intense.
good and intense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's intense.
So you can like make yourself these small promises, you know, like you start off small, and like in terms of like the bigger things, like telling yourself as well that, like like if I get into an argument with someone after we've made up, like telling myself to sit down, evaluate what I could learn from that, what I did wrong, and like for the next time that I might get into argument with someone, like how to react better than I did
Mhm.
last time. You know?
So those are nice proactive ways to speak to the, I guess, the aftermath of things, like when I set goals for myself and then I don't achieve them. What
Mm.
what helps me, and it kind of, you kind of spoke on it a little bit, is not just making small steps, but kind of making it more tangible. Because I think that's what
Mhm.
helps make it less intimidating, is making it more tangible, like writing things down. Journaling helps, being able to kind of reflect back on where you are now versus like where you were like a week ago or versus like a month ago, and being able to kind of tell yourself what things you want to happen, and making those choices, and then trying to make the choice again, like what you said, but keeping track of it, I think, is something that's helped me. I'm usually pretty good at keeping mental notes of myself, but even just like conversations with myself. I know some people like to do that, like, okay, like how did we like how was that conversation? Like, should I have, like stuff kind of like that, reflecting, and then always figuring out what you want to do better next time. And it doesn't have to be like what you said, the whole of it. It can be in little pieces. Like maybe I will avoid responding when I haven't eaten yet, or when I'm at work and things are really high stress. Maybe I'll respond at a different time. I'll make a point to respond when I'm more calm in terms of like relationships, or if I want to be accountable in terms of other responsibilities that I want to fulfill. Oh, I didn't get to share my faith this week. I should make a point next week that even just one person, I'll try to do that. Just kind of those constant conversations of where am I at and where do I want to be, kind of things, kind of like going back and forth. um has it been hard for you, EJ, to be accountable, and are there ways that you've made it easier for yourself?
I mean, it's definitely it. The difficult part of it is consistency. Like the
Mm-hmm.
difficult part of it is consistency, and the thing with that I've kind of like learned to do better now is to give myself some grace if I'm not consistent. Like, because we know we all kind of fall into this mindset sometimes. So like, let's say you miss one day of workout, you're like, oh, it's ruined. Then you kind of just stop working out.
Mm-hmm.
You wake up at 10 a.m. one day, and then you just stop trying to wake up at 8 a.m. because you're telling yourself, I can't change. You know, like I always fall back to this habit. I always end up not maintaining this consistency. But you gotta remind yourself, right? You remind yourself of what you want to do and what you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you tell yourself you want to do, and you want to bridge that because it's for you too. It's for you to bridge that gap of like who you want to be and like where what you're doing to get there, right? Like it's little steps, small steps, like. And nothing with consistency, if you're not consistency is not like it's not like a straight like line.
Yeah.
There's gaps in those lines.
Mm-hmm.
There's gaps in those lines of consistency, but consistency is, even if there's gaps in those lines, you're still doing what you said you would do from the beginning, right? Even if there are like little dots here and there.
aware of it like aware of it that you're returning back to it somehow. Yeah, like you're
Mhm.
it's because I think it's worse to be not aware of it, right? Like you're not conscious of, like, oh, you said you're going to do that thing and then you completely forgot, and you're just like, oh. And then but then you can like kind of reel yourself back in, like once you remember it, right? Like you're like, okay, like let's reset, let's do it
Mhm.
again. I think it's in the effort, right? And I love that you
Yeah.
mentioned giving yourself grace, because it's not always going to look, or it's not always going to be the way that, like, your conflict won't always be like free of argument or free of like hurt feelings, but knowing that you want to do better, and then being able to take um, what you've done this time, and then learning from that situation, like what you mentioned earlier, and then going on. I think for me, the hardest part, that's in terms of accountability, is, I guess, just acceptance of what is and what isn't.
Mhm.
Um, like things that you aren't doing, like being real with yourself in that way, but then also like balancing that with grace. I feel like the hardest thing is a lot of the time is the self critic, where you're trying to balance the two of not being too hard on yourself, but then not being too, like, not babying yourself too much, where
Mhm.
it can still get you to propel forward and to move into action, so that things will still get done and things will still change. Whatever it is that you want it to change about your health. Um, I've been terrible at in terms of like sugar and things like that, but I'm trying to work towards that in trying again. Like, yeah, I know I said that I would do better with this, but let's rework it. Let's try to do it
Mhm.
differently. But yeah, hopefully this was a helpful conversation to those who were listening to us. This time of year is very um, reflective. I don't know about I don't know if that's just like sentimental. I don't know if that's the same for everybody, but it just gives off that kind of thing when you're
You look back, and like
yeah, for whatever reason, you can't help but looking back throughout the past year. So, if you're doing that, we hope that you can insert some accountability there and figure out where you're at and where you want to be. And there's always, good possibilities that are out there for you to pursue different things and to change different things. It's never too late. So, hopefully, you guys enjoyed this broadcast, and we'll see you again same time next week here on INC Radio Chat Line. This has been Tony and EJ. We'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.
Your Spotify playlist just got more exciting and inspiring because the INC Original Music is now on Spotify. Search up INC Original Music and discover songs about our faith and love, songs for our family and friends, songs full of hope,